In this video, I would like to be a little bit of a fanboy about Cyberpunk for the next minutes. And if you are on the fence, or if you were on the fence about playing this game, maybe you bought it in the first days or months after its release and you were disappointed by its quality, both technically and everything that they promised, or some of the elements that they promised about the game that weren't present on the release date. Or maybe you never bought it after seeing the disastrous launch of the game and all the clash around the game in that period, the reviews about the game and how polarizing the various scores given to the game were. Before I start saying anything, I want to say that Cyberpunk may be the best game I've ever played, or at least easily in the top 3, but it could easily be the best because it has this great capacity to bond an interesting story or an immersive atmosphere and game world with a fun game to play, basically, with interesting mechanics. It may not be the most complex RPG, it may not be the most detailed or the game with the most possible types of build you can have and so on. But nonetheless, shooting in the game, getting headshots with pistols from afar and abusing all the various multipliers with pistols and sniper rifles is very fun. So it's a fun game to play, but also it has a great story and or a great atmosphere and a great capacity to immerse yourself in its narrative and its game world. With that being said, I was lucky enough to basically elude and skim through all the various problems that the game had throughout its life cycle. In fact, I bought the game for the first time in September, so I found myself with a game that was technically sufficient and it was a nice game to see. And Night City is a fantastic world to explore. It has a great atmosphere, great music. The sound isn't necessarily perfect. There are a lot of glitches, or at least I had a lot of problematic and off-putting bugs. For example, when you would drive close to other cars while skimming through the roads of Night City, like the audio of the radios of the other cars would sometimes spike up, and so you were able to listen to the radios of the other people's, of the NPCs basically, and the AI cars from your car basically. And that was very frustrating because it sort of put off your radio sound and you just listened to whatever they were listening to, and the audio was like very high in those moments. And this happened very frequently, sometimes also when you were at foot. And so that was like maybe audio wise one of the biggest gripes I had with the game. But other than that, like the surround sounds, the music, the OST of the game, the various radios, especially the various samurai music chipping in and so on, were great. And I still, listen to them even now after I finish the game, and I've saved those music into my playlist. It was one of those cases in which I basically would roam around the game just to take in the city, maybe listen to a specific song, maybe stop for a while and just take in the atmosphere and take in the view. Some things in the game may break a little bit of this immersion. For example, there are specific, let's say, not even side quests, but specific activities that you could do across the map that were always there, and that was strange. I will explain what I mean. For example, maybe you would find some policemen shooting a group of rebels or a group of punks, and that was like a sort of an activity that you could do. You could help the NCPD and take care of the bandits and basically get more reputation. But you would find like these specific activities going on in the same spot, so you would pass in front of these activities or these let's say mission spots, and you will always find like the same policemen fighting with the same street punks basically. And so it's like from an immersion standpoint, it didn't make sense because like for days on end, you had the same people doing this, like shooting each other in the same spot. So I get it from a gameplay or a game, let's say as the structure of a game, that's a mission that you have to complete if you want to complete. And so it's always there, but maybe it would have been more, let's say, coherent with the game itself if those were activities that would pop up randomly. That also happens. Like sometimes you would find NCPD cops in their cars trying to catch like another car and shooting each other randomly. So that was, that was fitting for the, let's say, the internal coherent narrative of the game, but in other cases it was strange. Also, like the police in general in this game sometimes behaves very strangely. Like sometimes you would help them and they would start to shoot you for whatever reason. You would become like hostile for no reason, even though you actually helped them. Or sometimes there were strange encounters all around with the police in this game. I went a little bit off track, but I was talking about the technical side of the game. So all in all, it is a very beautiful game to look at and to play in. And it was one of those instances, and maybe few instances, in which I was envious of not having a PC or a gaming PC strong enough to play Cyberpunk at max settings and with the path tracing option enabled. The console versions are okay, but you see the limitations of it, especially if you're playing in performance mode, even though like ray tracing mode doesn't add that much. I think it just adds like the smoke ray tracing or the ray tracing effect on smoke, and it just plummets the performance, and it adds this strange delay from your control input and the actual action of the player. So there is this sort of input lag, or what seems like an input lag present, or maybe it's just that the frame rate is so low that the game feels less responsive. But in general, you see its limitations, or the limitation of the console version when, for example, looking afar and looking at first of all, the details of the things in the distance and all the pop-in you see while going around Night City, especially with fast vehicles. Obviously, there's no ray tracing, even though the game still has a good light system, but it is no path tracing, obviously. And in general, when looking afar, you lose a lot of the details that the game has to offer. And this is generally something that you see with console games. So when you're in close quarter areas or, short to medium distance areas, it's okay to look at and it can be even nice to see. But once you go outside, you start to lose a lot of the details from the environment that surrounds you to be able to run the game at a decent frame rate. So as I was saying, I was lucky to play the game with a good, let's say, technical state, or I played the game in a good technical state compared to those who played it when it first came out. And also with a lot of the stuff that was promised and that wasn't in the base game, even like little things, for example, the ability to buy a flat or to use the metro and so on. The other thing I didn't mind as much was all the promises around the, let's say, role-playing aspect of the game. I think the game was advertised to have more role-playing options, and a game that had a lot of different types of ways to play it, different types of variety in how it could be played. But all in all, it's a fairly action game, even though you can have different builds, for example, only using blades and katanas and the mantis arms. But generally speaking, is fairly action game. I basically had my cool stats very high, and also like intelligence and technical capacity, if I'm not mistaken. And if you have like a very high cool perks, you basically can like one-shot everyone by hitting them in the head with like snipers or pistols and so on. So yeah, you have different types of builds, but all in all, I would always kill the vast majority of my enemies using pistols and snipers. And all the multipliers I had, thanks to the specific weapons I used, especially when you get the silenced sniper rifle from Panam, and also like the silenced pistol from the DLC. And so you also have the stealth elements, like you're basically a silent killer. And so like all the hacking abilities, I basically never use them. I only use them when I was against bosses. And as an aside, I didn't find the bosses or the boss fights to be, that interesting. You're just basically trying to kill a sponge of health, and that's it. But returning to what I was saying, I basically used the hacking skills in these cases, and also to defeat like big, let's say, robots or big machines like turrets or sentinels. But I don't mind the fact that the game promised maybe all this ability to role play. I mean, it is there. I don't want to make it seem like it isn't, but I think that if you want, you can just go through the game and without thinking too much about it. But nonetheless, the game is fun to play. Like, the gameplay is fun, the weapons feel nice to use, and I was very surprised by this because obviously they made the Witcher games, and now they're making a first-person shooter game, and I think that the weapons feel good to use, and like all the effects, all the evisceration you can impose to the enemies' corpses, and all the movements and the slow motion effects. It's fun. It's very fun to try different things. Maybe try different cybernetics you implanted. Have fun with the high jumps, double jumps, and whatever it is. It's fun. Maybe it isn't frenetic and fast paced as Doom, for example, Doom Eternal and the like, but it is close. I mean, it can be, if you want, very adrenalinic, even though the AI isn't all that advanced. But the game is fun to play. It's fun to, even now and then, it's nice to just sometimes kill a bunch of enemies or do even side quests just to try different approaches to the battles, even more so when you maybe just unlocked something new, for example the invisibility cloth, or I don't know what it is called, and so it's like fun to try those perks around. So it is basically, at least for me, an action game that has a very good story. Well, maybe it isn't like the best story you will ever play, but I think that especially the immersive capacity of the game, especially things like the graphics, the animations, and more so the voices in the game, the voice acting, I think that those things are able to make the narration of the game and its story feel better. It sort of steps up the game. But the story is good. I mean, it has some, I think, dull moments, especially in the middle section of it. But I think the strongest part of it is the relationship you have with all the characters, especially Johnny, but also the game gives you time to think about like your condition, the condition with the relic, and your life as V in Night City. I felt very emotionally connected with the game and with its characters, with Panam, with Johnny, with Jackie and Judy and the like. It was nice to do all the side quests just to learn more about these characters, to learn more about their story, their personality, what they think about, how they think. It was nice. It had like specific interactions, like with Johnny, and specific conversations, even with Victor in one of the initial stages of the game, were very profound and very, let's say, they touched the right chords, if you want to be poetic. It gave you, it made you feel something. There was something there. It was very cool and interesting, and it was a game that made me think about its story, made me think about maybe not necessarily the story per se and what it was being said, like the actual things, like the actual missions, like do this, do that, go here to do this, and the relic and so on, but all the thinking that sprouted from all this, and the, let's say, the interest that the game was able to make me have for its characters and its story, and also Night City as a concept, and as, let's say, a sort of a philosophical analysis of the city and of the various possible outcomes you can have living in Night City, and sort of analyzing everything that was happening in Night City, all the lives of other people, and all the aspects of Night City and of its, as I said, philosophy, if you want to put it that way. So very cool game. As I said, maybe like the best game I've ever played, and highly recommend playing it. You won't be disappointed, or maybe you will, but I think it's a good game to play.